is unable to fast ever, right? So far, we've been speaking about if you don't fast or if you break your fast, you have to make up your days. The person who is never able to fast, there is no option for them to make up days. So this doesn't apply to them. Their only option is to feed. So as Ramadan comes in, they make the intention that for each day in Ramadan, their compensation for fasting, for not being able to fast, is to find an indigent person, a needy person, and feed them each day in Ramadan. And this is something that you would do every single day, right? So the same day you're fasting, if I can't fast, I'm going to find someone that day and feed them. Right? Now, if this person is temporarily sick, so let's say, take for example the pregnant woman. We'll call that a temporary illness. In a Sharia, it's treated as a temporary illness. Or somebody who is very sick and they have to take medication, right? And this medication is going to last part or all of Ramadan. But the fact that they will be able to fast in the future, the fact that they have the ability to fast, possibly, right? That they have the ability to fast, they would still feed, but they would make the intention to make up the days, right? However, if they chose in this case, and you can correct me on this, if they chose in this case, because it's a temporary illness, right? So let's say, I'm sick for 3 days, and I choose not to feed. I don't have to feed, but I have to make up the days of my fast. I don't have to feed, but I have to make up the days of my fast. Because my illness is short and temporary, and I have the ability to fast thereafter.
What is the situation where a person takes high blood pressure medicine, and they usually would take before they take the suhoor, with water or whatever. For some reason they might forget. But if they don't take it before the evening comes, the pressure might go up. Do they take it and break their fast?
Yeah, they should. So again, right, the fast should not endanger your life.
Okay.
So if you forget to take your medicine early in the morning before suhoor, right, and so this goes back to something that we said yesterday. Mm-hmm. You know you. Mm-hmm. You know your condition better than anyone else, mm-hmm. right? So let's say I didn't take my medication in the morning, but I know that there are some days that I can make the fast, mm-hmm. even if I don't take my medication. Mm-hmm. And it's not a life and death situation, mm-hmm. right? I know me. I know there are some days I can make the fast, mm-hmm. and I choose to give it a shot, right? You know what? This might be one of those days I can make it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try to make it. Mm-hmm. So let's say you start going through that day with the intention of fasting, right? Mm-hmm. Because you went to bed the night before. Mm-hmm. You made the intention to wake up for suhoor, mm-hmm. take your medication, and then start your fast, right? So you already had the intention to fast. Mm-hmm. You overslept, you missed suhoor, Fajr has come in, you wake up, you can no longer take your medication, you can no longer have suhoor, right? Mm-hmm. So your fasting day has begun. You made the intention already. Mm-hmm. If you know that you can make it, you feel like you can try to make it through the day, then alhamdulillah, you start your day, right? If you make it to the end of that fasting day without any incidents, then that is a good day for you, right? Okay. That's your fasting day, it's valid, no issues there. But if as you're moving through the day, you feel like, I'm not too sure I can make it, mm-hmm. I don't know what will happen, it is not incumbent upon you to push yourself to try to make it. Okay. Right? You have a condition that is known. Mm-hmm. What you should do then is, if you feel like it's coming on, make the intention to break your fast, knowing that you have to make that day up at the end. Right? You don't have to feed. If you choose to feed, you don't have to feed. That is not part of a requirement for you. You just have to decide to make up your day.
Yeah, man, come on. Who'd you ask me?
That's right. So you make up your day, and you don't necessarily have to feed. All right. So does that answer the question? Yeah. Cool. All right. So any temporary illness is the same thing, right? You plan to make up the day. If you choose to feed, that's extra barakat for you in that case. But feeding is not a requirement for you in that case. Chapter on the things that are prohibited for the fasting person, or what makes his fast invalidated or invalid. Any questions before I move on?
Yeah, I always do the attention in the night before Ramadan starts for the whole month. That's why I always do that. What you're saying is another option, do it every night, but I prefer to do it for the whole month.
No, yeah, you do it for the whole month. Yeah, you do it for the whole month. I think what you're referring to is when I said you would have made the intention the night before. So just wrap that up into you've made intention to fast all of the days of Ramadan. So that will just continue from that perspective. All right. The meaning of fasting in religious law is to abstain from food, drink, and sexual contact. That is what is considered obligatory or mandatory. As for what is recommended, it consists of avoiding foul speech, backbiting, al-hana, and anything that is a form of inappropriate speech or behavior. So this is what we'll go to a bit more, and I think the Imam might want to say something on this. No, or continue. Not yet. Not yet. Okay. But the thing I want to say here is this: we have a tendency to tell people that, or tell kids, and even some adults, right? We hear them cursing, we hear them using foul speech, we hear them saying stuff like that. I mean, like, if you keep doing that, you'll break your fast. That, we understand the intention behind it, but that is false. That is false. What breaks the fast? And when we say breaking the fast, we need to be very clear what we mean by breaking the fast, right? What breaks the fast is eating, drinking, and sexual intercourse. The other stuff that is sunnah, right? Backbiting, useless speech, just engaging in things that don't keep you on the straight path or the path towards Allah, it makes your fast less acceptable. It has a chance of making your fast less acceptable to Allah. So on one hand, we are talking about what is acceptable and what makes a fast valid. Right? So the things that we threaten kids with and even other adults, so somebody shouts at you and is like, if you keep shouting at me, you're going to break your fast. No, they won't really break their fast. What they will do is make their fast less pristine. Right? The fast is less shiny when you litter it with all of these things. Does that make sense? So this is just a way for us to change our language with kids and with each other in terms of the things that break our fast, because we want to be very clear on that. Whoever eats, drinks, or has sexual contact, forgetting that she is fasting, or has miscalculated the commencement of the fast, there is nothing upon him except making up the day. This is the case for every obligatory fast. So you forget that it's a day of fasting and you happen to eat or drink or have sexual contact, you just make up that day. More common with eating and drinking, less common with sexual contact, but it's still possible, right? It is still possible in the early days of the fast. It's still possible, but there might be some question behind that, right? Now, that's during the day of the fast. If coming to the start of the day of the fast, right? So you're not too sure if it's a whole time or not. Sorry, you're not too sure if Fajr has come in or not, and you eat or drink and you're not sure, and then you realize, oh wow, it actually came in when I eat or drank, or while I was still having intercourse with my spouse, then you just make up that day afterwards. All right? But if you know, you're like, you know what, the time is coming, I am not too sure that the meal I'm about to eat or the engagement I'm about to have with my spouse will end before the time of Fajr. So you're aware. For us in our condition, we go by the minute, right? We are aware of it. And you're like, you know what? I think I could be done eating, drinking, and having intercourse with my spouse by this time. But you know that the time is short. You know that the time is very short. And you're like, there's a chance that I may not be fit, but I'm going to risk it. Then you're now in violation. Because you know better and you have the means to tell differently. Right? And I'm really linking that more to the sexual intercourse as opposed to the eating or drinking. Because we can manage the eating or drinking immediately, right? And differently. So I do want us to just be careful for those of us who are married with our relations with our spouses. And approach that very carefully, especially around when when the time for fasting begins in the morning. We good? All right, so this is just more of an awareness more than anything else. It has been said if a person has sex forgetting that he's observing the fast, then he must offer expiation as well as make up the day. The expiation here or something. If a person has sex forgetting he's observing the expiation here, it's fasting 60 consecutive days or just just reading one person. Okay. All right. So I was just verifying something here. It has been said, so there's another opinion, right? If a person has sex forgetting that he's observing the fast, then he must offer expiation as well as make up the day. So we know that someone who eats or drinks, the position in the madhab is that if someone eats or drinks, then they continue their fast, but they still must make up that day. We know that there is another position in other madhab that you just continue that day and you don't have to make it up. In the Maliki madhab, the preferred position is that if you forget and you happen to eat or drink, you finish your day fasting, but you still must make up that day afterwards. That's the position. However, there's another opinion that says that if it is sexual contact, then not only do you make up the day, but you also feed a person as an added expiation. Why? Because again, it's a bit more difficult to forget to fast because that is a very different type of interaction, right? When it comes to sexual intercourse. This has
one person.
Huh?
One person.
One person, yeah. You're not. This is not the one where you feed 60 people or you fast for 60 consecutive days. It's just you feed one person as added expiation.
I got one quick question dealing with that. What if it's a Muslim who's miskeen or really doing bad, he's out on the street or whatever, and he's obligated to fast? I'm not saying his health to say he can't fast. Could you feed that person every day? Or would that be kind of going against him because he should be able to fast? Because it's not because the person can't fast, but maybe he's homeless or something like that.
So just now, so when are you feeding? So he has the ability to fast?
Well, I mean, along those best, but I'm just saying that's the only person might be in that situation is because they did something where they put themselves in a position where they, shelter or whatever, something like that, and they don't have no job. So would that person count as you would feed them every day? Or no, because they should be able to fast?
No, so I'll let Imam Anas jump in here, but I just want to say, if you're feeding him, my level of knowledge would go, if you're feeding him after Maghrib time, when it's time to break the fast, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're feeding him during the day, I'll let Imam Anas.
It doesn't make a difference. If you're feeding, when you're offering someone a meal, they don't have to eat it immediately. You're not sitting there feeding them the food.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're giving him what he needs, you're fulfilling a need. That's your obligation, is to fulfill the need. You're fulfilling the need.
Okay.
And whether he's Muslim, non-Muslim, whatever, it doesn't matter. If he qualifies, he qualifies. If he's
he go and eat right there, that's on him.
Well, that's on him. That's nothing to do with him. I mean, you're not forcing him to eat the food.
Okay. Got you.
So the piece about offering also an expiation for intercourse, this has been attributed to Abdul Malik, who narrated this position from Malik. The first position is a standard in his school. Sexual emissions during the sleep from men or women does not invalidate the fast. Menstruation, on the other hand, does if it occurs while the woman is fasting. So we covered some of this yesterday already. Fasting is not valid during a woman's cycle, and she should make up the days upon its completion. Whoever eats, drinks, or has sex intentionally during the fast, if his fast is voluntary, he should make it up. This is the case as well for any obligatory fast other than Ramadan. There is no expiation upon the person who deliberately breaks his fast. It is only sinful and disobedient. So we're not speaking about Ramadan here. We're speaking about anything else, even an obligatory fast outside of Ramadan or a voluntary fast outside of Ramadan. The only thing that they have to do is to make up that fast. Whoever eats or drinks during the fast, if his fast is voluntary, he should make it up for any obligatory fast other than Ramadan. So an obligatory fast other than Ramadan would be something where you promise Allah to fast, right? You promise to fast for an oath or something like that. That becomes obligatory upon you because you made a promise with Allah. You made an oath with Allah. So that would fall into this category here, right? So if you break your fast after you've made a promise to do it, then you're being sinful and disobedient, right? But there's no kafara in terms of fasting 60 days or feeding 60 people for that type of breaking of the fast. You still owe that oath though, right? But you don't have to pay the kafara for it. One, and then two. Hakim.
Because if you want to make an oath, is it do you pick a specific day, or do you just say, well, this happens on a day of fast, or is it?
So again, our recommendation is that we not do those types of oaths, but people do it in different ways, right? Some people pick a particular day, some people pick a certain period of time, and it really is up to the individual. But the recommendation is that you be very careful making those types of oaths.
But it's like even in Ramadan, well, you make the intention again, so you're making the intention to fast every day so you don't have to do it every day, but it's for the whole month, so that's for the time period, not day by day.
Yeah, but again, it's different, right? Ramadan time period is a fixed time period. That is not going to shift, right? But if I say, oh Allah, if you give me this, I'm going to fast 3 days, but I don't put a time period on those 3 days, then those 3 days can be any time outside of Ramadan, right? So I understand what you're saying, but it's two very different things.
What's the difference between expiation and kafara? Is that the same thing?
It's the same thing.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought it was two different things. Okay.
Yeah, the expiation is a translation for kafara.
Oh, okay.
Whoever is. All right, so this is the case as well for any obligatory fast than Ramadan. All right, there's no expiation upon the person who deliberately breaks his fast. It's only sinful and disobedient. However, if this happens during the fast of Ramadan, then the person must offer the expiation. In this case, the expiation is to free a slave, which we admitted that none of us have the ability to do that right now. Right? This is your personal ownership of a person, right? So if any of you indulge in that right now, you shouldn't be. But if you are, then this is one way to get out of, to make a recompense for fasting, for breaking your fast, or fast 2 consecutive months, or feed 60 needy persons. Any one of these 3 will suffice, although Malik preferred the feeding in this case. Feeding is to give the equivalent of, so we already went over, so I won't spend time giving the, take feeding as just giving what is the equivalent of a meal in our context right now. Cool? Right, so I'm sending the page to page 12. It does not suffice him to feed 60. All right, it doesn't suffice him to feed 60 mud to less than 60 needy people, nor can he feed the 60 to the same person for 60 days. Meaning that if you identify one individual who needs to be fed, you should not feed that person once for 60 days. Right, so this again is the expiation, right? You've intentionally broken your fast and you have to feed 60 people. It's 60 different people over the space of that 60 days.
What happens to the person who can't fast?
It is different to the person who cannot fast, who is feeding a person each day for the month of Ramadan, right? Okay. You can feed that same person or a group of people, right? So let's say you've identified 5 people who you're feeding for the month of Ramadan, and you're rotating them, right? You're like, I feed one today, one the next day, and then you start that cycle over in the month of Ramadan. That's fine. Because this person, again, is not offering a penance, right? This person has been given a condition by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are trying to fulfill the obligation as best as they can. So they are finding a person who is indigent and feeding that person every day for the month of Ramadan. The person who willfully breaks their fast, they have done something egregious. They have done something strictly prohibited. So now they owe something a bit more. So their effort should be greater, right? Their effort should be greater and more significant. And that's the context of this here. We good? Mm-hmm. Having sexual intercourse or making sexual contact outside of the private area with ejaculation is the same in regards to requiring expiation. Meaning that if you don't have penetration and if you just touch, if the private parts just touch each other on the outside, it's the same thing. Right? It doesn't make a difference here whether it is penetration or not. The same is the case if he or she kisses intentionally or touches and ejaculates. Touching between the 2 private parts requires expiation and invalidates the fast, regardless of whether there is ejaculation or not. The case is the same whether there's contact with a human, animal, frontal, or basically any type of sexual contact, whether it be human or animal, from any of the openings in the private area, front or back, same thing. Right? There's no difference here in terms of the, well, in terms of what is required as the expiation. If it is deliberately done, then the person must make up the day and offer expiation. If a man has sexual, so I do want to make sure that we are clear on this. If we break, we are talking about feeding 60 people or fasting 60 consecutive days, but we still owe that day that we broke. So offering the expiation doesn't lift the burden on us from offering that same day that we violated. That is still something that we have to pay back. Are we clear? So we still owe that. So if I broke my fast for 5 days, then I need to, and I choose the option of fasting, then that means that for each day that I break, I'm fasting 60 consecutive, well, 2 months, right? 2 lunar cycles. I'm fasting and I'm using 60 here, as the maximum that you generally have to do that for, right? But it could be 58 to 60, yes? Mm-hmm. So you're fasting, quote unquote, 60 consecutive days, 5 times. Yes.
Wait a minute.
All right.
No, it's not you. I'm talking about it's my mind.
Okay. I have an eraser for this here.
Yeah,
For each day that for each day that I have to make up, I have to do 60 days.
That's if you intentionally break your fast, not if you miss the day. If you miss the day, you miss the day. You make up the day. But if you intentionally violate the fast by eating, drinking, or having relations during the month, during the day, intentionally, that's a violation. And that violation is punishable by, is punitive. So that kafara or expiation is that's punitive. You have to, it's meant as a deterrent. So if for some reason you don't heed the call, the warning, and you go ahead and do whatever it is you want to do, for every day, that's what the expiation is. In addition to you got to make up the day, and then you have the kafara.
So I want us to be very clear.
So the day isn't included in that in the 60. The day that you missed is not included in that. Yes.
So for clarity, if you forget and you do any of these wonky things, is it
you make up
just make up that day? Just make up that day.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. So
with the exception of if a person has intercourse during the day, they forget during the day and they have intercourse, which you may be struggling with. How can 2 people forget? But this is a hypothetical. If by chance that were to happen and, well, we forgot, then, you make up and you, again, yes, there's the expiation as well, which is
1 person.
1 person?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 person.
Right. So I just want us to be clear on what intentional breaking looks like, right? This is, you have a question or you're good?
No, I'm saying, is that only in terms of sexual intercourse, or is that in terms of, like, if you break your fast, like, on purpose in general? Like,
No. So I'm going to do this. So this is actually going to answer this question here. So when I say intentional breaking of the fast, it's like this. Let's imagine today's Ramadan. It's Ramadan. The fast has begun. I know consciously it's Ramadan. I really like this drink here. I really want to take a drink right now, right? Even if it's just a sip and it goes down your throat, what becomes incumbent upon you? That is a day that you now have to make up, and you have to do one of these 2 things. Pick one of these 2 things, because I know for a fact that it is Ramadan. I know, and I'm like, you know what? I still really want to eat or drink this right now during the daylight hours. Yes, that's intentional breaking of the fast. Same thing with sexual intercourse. I know it's Ramadan, but I need to do what I need to do. I'll just make tawbah afterwards. No, tawbah doesn't cover for this one in Ramadan. Tawbah is still required, making up the day is still required, and one of these two becomes required.
Smoking.
Smoking.
That's another assumption.
You see, smoking gets, some of us will take a more hardline approach to smoking, but smoking gets somewhat technical, right? Because it depends on whether we fall on the side of smoking being permissible or not. But we'll put smoking, and I'm comfortable, and Imam Anas, you can say different. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Please, go ahead.
So the issue with smoking is that the smoke falls into the category of anything that passes.
Sure.
Yeah. So that breaks your fast because you're inhaling this smoke. Whether you're getting any nourishment from it or not is irrelevant. A person could swallow a penny, an object that's not digestible, and still break their fast. So smoking would absolutely break one's fast. Now, what I do want to further clarify with regards to, No, I want to further clarify with regards to a person intentionally breaking their fast, is that someone that begins to experience symptoms of an illness, for example, say I'm becoming dehydrated and I know what that feels like. So I have to do something. I have to drink something. Then that person is not punished.
No, that's not it.
Okay? So it would be advisable that the person break their fast, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not require you to perish in order to submit to him like that. So you don't end up in a hospital, in the ICU because you were trying to fast. That's not required of you. That's not the purpose of the fast.
And the only thing that is required there is just to make up that day. There is no feeding that comes as a requirement attached to that. So that goes back to the same question that you had earlier.
Just a question about the smoking. Like, for instance, you just have one and going to work or whatever, and you're around people. Not that you're literally around people smoking, but you happen to inhale it because you're walking past someone that doesn't apply.
That doesn't apply because that wasn't anything intentional. That's not anything that you're doing. So you just continue your fast, and there's no makeup for that either. Other questions on this? So we're clear on what the intentional breaking of the fast looks like, and what happens accidentally. So just to wrap up this point, accidental breaking of the fast is you see a drink there, and by habit, you're somebody who you grab your coffee in the morning and you drink, right? Now you might say, let's say you're somebody who buys Starbucks every morning, right?
That's not me.
I'm just turning away. I just happen to say that. So let's say you're someone who, I saw Dunkin' Donuts, so I can't say Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. So let's say you go to 7-Eleven every day, right? And you buy a drink. But that's your habit every morning. Every morning you wake up, you jump in your car, you hit a particular location, you buy a drink, and you continue moving on, right? For whatever reason, there's this morning that you're absent-minded. You start off with the intention of fasting. You've woken up, you've made your sahur, you pray fajr, and you're rolling in your day. And you are so absent-minded, you jump in your car. So I'm using the real out of the scene example here, right? Not somebody who's passing something and happens to pick it up and sips it accidentally. But something that has happened to some of us, right? You're just going on autopilot. You jump in your car, you get to your location, you buy the drink, and then as you take a sip, you're like, wow, oh, it's Ramadan. That is still considered unintentional breaking of the fast. That would still fall into the category of unintentional breaking of the fast, right? Because all of that happened and you were just going on autopilot, right? It sounds improbable, but it's quite possible. And the reason why it's quite possible, just think of if you've ever been driving and you know you're supposed to be going in one direction and you find yourself taking a completely different route.
Yes, it is possible.
Right? So you're very conscious of what you're doing, but you're going on autopilot. Unlikely in terms of the eating or drinking, but still very possible. So I just want this to be clear on what requires this level of penance or penalty. All right?
So-
like if you have, if you're kissing passion and you reach so you come so that would separate.
Please,
All right, so, give me 1 second here. So I want to go back to something. So we've been speaking about sexual intercourse and penetration. Earlier on in that section there, it mentioned something about kissing. If we kiss passionately to the point where we become aroused and there's ejaculation, that breaks our fast as well. That's a violation, and now we owe this penance of fasting the 60 consecutive days or feeding 60 people. Right? So although we've been speaking really a lot about penetration, if you're like, okay, you know what, I'm not having sex, but I'm just there making love, as you would say, right? And you get aroused to the point that you ejaculate, then you are in violation, and now you still owe the day as well as the penance that comes with it.
We're not talking about a peck on the cheek.
No, we're not talking about a peck on the cheek. Unless a peck on the cheek does it for you like that. We have to know ourselves. You have to know yourself. So, right, so if that is the case, no, and so I know I made a joke there about it, but I do want to be clear on something here, right? We all need to know ourselves, right? If we know that engaging in so you have your spouse and you engage, you should avoid engaging in certain types of talk during the day of the fast, right? But let's say that certain types of conversations get you to a certain point and you intentionally engage in that, you still fall into this category. We need to know ourselves. If holding your wife's hand does that, we need to be very careful as to what we're doing that gets us to a certain point. Different people have different levels and different states of engagement, of arousal, right? We need to know ourselves. Yes?
Yes.
So at the clear-cut level, it's sexual intercourse. The other pieces that surround intimacy around there, we need to know ourselves and know what we need to be careful of with respect to that. And the more we do it during the day of the fast, the more it makes our fast less pristine or less acceptable, or chance of making our fast less acceptable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, the whole thing about it is abstinence, right? And focusing on our relationship with Allah. So I'll take your question and then
yes.
read that.
I unintentionally get that coffee and I'm driving and I realize that it's Ramadan. I continue to, I do the fast, then I have to, after the fast, after Ramadan, to make that up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's it, yeah. But, so I do want to be clear on this. If you took a sip, right, and you realize it's Ramadan, you cannot say, hey, you know what? Well, I already started drinking it. I'm just going to finish it and then make up the day. In that moment, now you have transgressed and now you intentionally are breaking your fast. Right? You can't finish it after you realize. If you decide to finish it after you realize, no, it's no longer unintentional. No, it is intentional. And now you owe this significant penance here. You good?
Sure.
So the minute the realization comes, we need to re-enter that state of Ramadan.
Okay, and I do want to further clarify with regards to the accidental drinking or eating. The making up the day is precautionary only. Okay? It's precautionary. That's in the madhab. When I say precautionary, meaning that you don't want a chance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to accept from you. Okay, so you making up the day that's you going the extra mile to, ensure, inshallah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept from you. There's a clear hadith where, in other madhahib, there are different positions. One of the positions is that if you forget and you eat or you drink, you don't have to make up that day. In the Maliki madhab, as a precautionary measure, you make up the day.
So if a man has sexual contact with his wife and she willingly participates, she too must make up the day and offer the expiation. She is not suffered by her husband's expiation. This is according to Malik and some of his companions. Each individual is responsible for their own fast. All right. So if the wife willingly participates, she becomes responsible for her own engagement in breaking her fast. If she is forced into the act by her husband, then he is responsible offering her expiation in addition to offering his own.
Wow.
Are we clear? So if the husband forces his wife into sexual intercourse, right? He forces her into it, then she doesn't have to make any expiation for that. In terms of the feeding of the 60 people and the fasting 60 days. He offers his own as well as hers. This is standard opinion in Malik school and is the position of most of his companions. Sahnun stated the husband is not obligated to offer expiation on her behalf because there is no expiation on her part because she was forced by her husband, but must offer expiation for himself and make up the day. So that's the other opinion, right? The other opinion is that he doesn't have to offer expiation for her because she didn't do anything wrong intentionally. He only offers expiation for himself. That's the other opinion in the school. Slaves, male or female, are not obligated to offer expiation besides fasting. And this is if they are forced by their master. Malik stated, if they own something to offer expiation with and they give it, I hope this will suffice for them. There is no difference to Malik and his companions between people who deliberately break their fast by eating or drinking and the one who breaks it by having sexual intercourse. Both are obligated to offer expiation in the form of what was mentioned previously and to also make up the day. That's right. So, right, there's disagreement between his statement and that of his companions regarding what breaks his intention to fast the day and make the intention the night before to fast, but doesn't actually eat or drink. In this case, it is said that the person must make up the day regardless and offer the expiation. Others say that the person is obligated to make up the day only and doesn't have to offer the expiation. Others have stated that there is no need to make up the day or offer expiation unless the person actually eats or drinks, even with a small amount, if it is deliberate and the person knows they must fast. This is a sound disposition. Sahnun stated, anyone who makes the intention to break the obligatory fast must make up the day. If he makes the intention during the day of the fast, it does not harm him unless he does it. It is preferable for him to make up the day. If any person who has to offer expiation must also make up days they missed. Sorry, any person who has to offer expiation must also make up the days they missed. Expiation does not take the place of making up the day, and we covered that already, right? So what is owed is still owed, and the expiation is still the expiation. This is the case regardless of if it is the freeing of a person who is in bondage or feeding a person or fasting 2 consecutive months. If a person breaks their fast for multiple days, they must make expiation for every day, regardless of whether they offered expiation for the previous violation. Oh, that's what I was mentioning up here, and I know I got sidetracked. So every incident or every instance of it requires expiation. Each day in Ramadan stands by itself. Right? Each day in Ramadan stands by itself. So I break one day, this becomes necessary. I break a second day, whatever happened on the first day I still owe, and then this now becomes owed as well. I break a third day, so every time I break, I just add on to what I owe. In addition to the days that I broke.
Muslims don't fast Ramadan at all for years. They're in trouble. I'm just saying. So wow. That's a one.
I don't know if I missed
You want to say something?
No, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know about. No, go ahead.
No, you are about to ask a question.
Yeah, I don't know if I missed this now, but yesterday, if I recall, we said that if a person is making those days up and they don't do it, then they got to start back over again.
Yeah.
So is that figured in?
That's figured in.
Yeah, that's the 2 consecutive month expiation is where you have to start over again. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, a person missed days and they have days to make up. Those days should be made up, as soon as possible. But there is no, the continuity isn't important like that.
Okay.
With regards to the expiation, continuity is important.
Gotcha.
Okay, and that's a condition. So if that condition is violated, then the person has to you press the restart button, you go back to the beginning, and you start over again.
No, so one clarifying question here. If it's broken on the condition of illness,
Well, then that's a different story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so
if
if
it's
somebody.
broken because the person decides, well, I'm tired, I need a break, then
You start over. But if you fall into, so just like in Ramadan, right? So if I'm fasting my 60 consecutive days as expiation for an intentional breaking of the fast, and I get sick, then I just know I need to add that day on afterwards. So I just continue my 60 days and add that day on afterwards. If, however, I'm like, as Imam said, you know what, I'm done with this for right now, I need a break, then I take my break, but then I start counting my 60 again, right? And keeping in mind that I'm not breaking again an oath that I made with Allah.
I have two questions. So does that same exemption occur for travelers? All right, so you're traveling, all right, and during that 58 to 60-day period, all right, you're making up time. So is traveling, do we consider traveling the same as when someone is ill?
So we go back to the condition we had yesterday on traveling, right? The conditions for travel, and you making the choice to fast. Because remember, in traveling, we have the choice to fast or not. And if we can maintain that fast, we should maintain that fast. If the traveling is optional travel and not required travel, that we have to travel, then it doesn't, if the travel is not required and not something that we have to do, then it doesn't apply to this. We have to maintain the fast.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
My second question was this word here, muftir. What is that?
Muftir. A muftir is a person that breaks their fast.
Oh, that's what that. Okay.
That's what a muftir is.
Okay, muftir. Okay.
I did want to say something with regards to what you brought up, Muhammad Ali, about a person who violated the fast for years. What we don't want to do, we have to demonstrate compassion and mercy to our brothers and sisters, regardless of what condition they're in, what state they're in. If a person is struggling and they've been struggling for years, that's, unfortunately, that's what they've been afflicted with. What we don't want to do is discourage them by mentioning a penalty.
Right.
That, well, you haven't fasted for all this time, so this is what's going to happen to you. Right. You don't know that.
Right.
That's Allah's business. Okay? So that what we're discussing now is fiqh. We're not discussing spirituality.
Right.
So we have to demonstrate, we always have to, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة. Call to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using what? Wisdom and a good word. So wisdom, so you don't want to, chase people away. So a person could say, using the example of the hadith where the man killed 99 souls, 98, he went around asking, well, is there any hope for me? Is there any hope for me? And he was told, what? You killed all these people. What do you mean, is there any hope for me? No. So he killed the person that he asked. So this is real. It's real. And the condition of people's souls, if a person is struggling and they've been struggling, you don't want to add to that. You want to remind people of Allah's mercy and compassion first and foremost. You want to keep that front and center. Allah's compassionate and merciful. You want to keep that front and center. That's how you draw people in. You don't draw them in by saying Allah's going to punish you. So if that's the case, then I'm already damned. So why should I do this again? How can a person will lose hope? If I have to do all this stuff, how can I do that? I miss all that. I have to make up all these salahs. How am I going to do that? I can't. I have to make up all these fasting. I can't do that. That's impossible. I'm not going to do it. That's not how we give da'wah. We give da'wah by keeping compassion and mercy front and center. Allah's merciful, Allah's compassionate, look at the reward. Consider doing this, as opposed to Allah's going to punish you.
And just add on to this. So this is, so what we are saying here. So what we are saying here is something that actually happened and happens, right? So let's be real, our community has people who, they navigate their Islam in various ways. One day after Jumu'ah, brother came outside, he's like, listen, I've been off of it, He's like, what do I have to do? I'm like, listen, you have options, right? First of all, exactly as Imam is saying, know that Allah is most forgiving or merciful. Start off with that. This is where we need to start, right? That's the first point. So the first thing I would recommend that you do is make tawbah. If nothing else, make tawbah. Because you know now you're aware of what happened in the past was problematic, right? So at least start off with making tawbah. If you choose to make up any of the days as a way to show that that you're really concerned about this, you have the option to do that as well. So he asked, he's like, do I have to count up all of the days? I said, if that's what you want to do, you can, but you don't have to burden yourself with all of that. But if that's what, I don't think I said you don't have to burden yourself. I think I just simply said, if that's what you want to do, you have the option to do that. But most importantly, now that you know what is required of you moving forward, make the best attempt to not repeat what happened in the past and move forward with as best as you can move forward. All right. So again, it's going back. So I'm only adding that on to say, we're not speaking hypotheticals here. This is exactly the case that happens with various individuals in our community. And your relationship with the person as an individual, you would know sometimes how much you might be able to push that person or not. So if there's somebody in, may Allah forbid, somebody in a group that we frequent often, who comes and says, you know, for the past, I've been here with you guys, but for the past 2 Ramadans, I haven't been doing anything. But this is a brother who we've been seeing around for 10 years. We know that he is engaging and stuff like, and I have a closer relationship. I'm like, you know better. You've been in our classes. You know better. You better find a way to try to push yourself a bit more. But that would be if I have that relationship with him. And I'm making some assumptions here, but again, letting him know that he can push himself a bit more, right? It's different from somebody who's coming and they're coming right out of their struggle, although he's still struggling, right? So I'm not trying to dismiss his challenges. Right. But I'm just thinking of, if it's somebody you have a different relationship with, I may give them a different push, but still not tell them, if you don't do this, because again, it's not my space. If you don't do this, then Allah will take this from you, because I have no idea. Cool?
This reminds me of the training what you do with a child. It's encouragement as opposed to exacting the punishment.
Exactly. So the rest of page 13 here. So all we are going to do is step up to where it says the comprehensive chapter on fasting. And I think we can move into the, I think we can move into the spirituality after that. So if a person forgetfully breaks their fast by eating or having sexual intercourse, if they miscalculated, they must only make up the day, and expiation is not obligatory. So I want to contextualize what is happening, what is about to happen in the next couple paragraphs. We're going to start seeing some variations on what we have read before. So some of these things that are coming next are different opinions, right? Are some differing opinions based on what we've already established as the practice that we have. So this part here, because it's more like what is the option? It's more like I'm thinking to skip that. All right, so I was just confirming with Imam Anas. My inclination was to skip it, and Imam Anas agrees that we could skip this piece because it really is just giving different opinions from what we've already established as the practice that we are advising that we move forward with. All right, so we know what should happen if somebody. So let me ask you this. If someone unintentionally breaks their fast, right, they accidentally eat or drink, what should they do?
They should stop and just continue to fast and then make that.
Right. Stop eating, continue to fast, make up the day. In the rest of this paragraph here, this is why I'm skipping that, right? In the rest of this paragraph here, it tells you that if the person accidentally breaks their fast, then they are no longer fasting, so they can continue to eat and drink. So I'm skipping all of that because it starts confusing the Kool-Aid here, right? It starts adding stuff in it that we don't need to add right now. So we know what we should do if we unintentionally break the fast by eating or drinking. If we unintentionally break the fast by having sexual intercourse, what should we do? If we unintentionally break the fast by having sexual intercourse, what should we do? Make up the day and feed one person, right? And feed one person. If we intentionally break the fast, what do we do? Make up the day and offer the expiation. Right, 60 days or 60 people. Good.
So, but the 60 people always remains, but the days can change depending on, that's the reason why it's 58.
Oh, yeah, yes. It depends on the lunar cycle, that's correct. Give me 1 second, please, just checking something here.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh.
Yeah, these are just all the opinions.
Excuse me,
Go ahead. Yeah, so all of that, so everything up to the bottom of page 14 gives the different opinions, and then it comes back down to the best opinion is what we have already agreed upon and what we have already stated. Right.
Says, bottom of 14, anything that makes it to the stomach.
Right, so I was just stopping at the paragraph just before that. I was reading the other opinions of the paragraph just before that, just to let you know where we are. So nothing has changed between the end of page 13 and the paragraph that ends in up on another day on page 14, right? When you read all of that, you'll just see it's different opinions. But what we are ending on is what we have already agreed upon based on the questions that I asked you a second ago. So now I'm going to start up. Anything that makes it to the stomach, snuff or injection, feeding tube, breaks the fast, and you must make up the day and nothing else. So this goes back to the question on the smoking and stuff like that.
My cousin won't get that next month, but they got injected.
But that's a feeding tube, an IV for nutrition. An IV is for nutrition, and a feeding tube is for nutrition. So it's very different. Yes? All right. All right, so let's just to make sure that I know there were some questions around this. So anything that makes it to the stomach, snuff or injection, feeding tube or IV breaks the fast and must be made up for the day and nothing else. So let's say you have to go in, let's say you get sick, and if you're sick and you're in the hospital, you technically really consider that a sick day and just make up that day anyway, right? But if you were insisting on, you know what, I'm going to keep fasting, I'm sick, I'm going to the hospital, but I'm going to keep fasting, and then when you get to the hospital, you're so dehydrated or something like that, they give you an IV to give you fluids, then now you definitely count that day as a makeup day, right? But if, however, so we had a case where somebody is saying that they're going to get dye injected to them for a procedure, for a CAT scan or something like that, to see, to see if there are to see the body clearer, basically, to see the images clearer. That is not for nutrition. That is not something that is getting injected into your stomach. It's not something that is getting injected to you to sustain your life. So that, in our opinion, does not break your fast. You good?
I've had that done, and I've been advised after they did that to drink a lot of water to get that stuff out.
Then that's something different, right? So now, so
just,
no, I'm glad you're mentioning that, right? So now, so we need to distill between the thing that gets injected to answer that fifth part of the question there. That itself doesn't break your fast, but if to sustain your life and for you to be healthy, getting that out of you becomes important, and the doctors are advising you to drink, then definitely drink. Then drink, because if that's part of the healing process, then do that and consider that a makeup day. Right? Just a brief.
For the person who gets the dye injected into them, and after they have the procedure, they have to drink a lot of water. The water is to flush the dye and flush your kidneys, so you will not have kidney problems later on. Because the dye will affect your kidneys. So that would be a makeup day.
Yeah, absolutely, right. So you definitely don't want to say, no, I'm just going to push through on this and make up my fasting day, right?
Yeah.
And you can always do time and stuff like that, but keep that in mind. Health is more important in this case here.
So you just said it, I think you just said it. So the individual has the option on whether or not to fast that day. He knows this procedure is going to occur. So he begins his fast, he goes to the hospital, and he gets this procedure done. He has the opportunity then just to stop his fast and make up that day anywhere.
So he has to start his day, right? Fasting, unless part of this requirement is that you need to drink a lot before you go in for the procedure, right? So different procedures require different things. If that is not a requirement for this procedure, he starts his day because he's not in that condition as yet, right? He starts his day fasting. Then when he gets there, he gets the injection. And if the injection happens right at the same time, right? If the injection happens, and by the time he comes out of the injection phase, Maghrib has come in, then he's free to eat and drink, and that is still a valid day for him or her, right? That is still a valid day. Because by the time they came out of the procedure, they had not eaten or drank, and Maghrib has come in, they eat or drink as normal, they break their fast, that's a valid fasting day. There's nothing with that, right? However, and by the time you get out of the procedure, it's not Maghrib time as yet, you've been advised to eat and drink, and you have a couple hours, you have a few hours before Maghrib, and eat and drink, and add that day to your makeup day at the end. Cool?
Okay, good.
Are we good?
Yeah.
All right, so that addresses that, inshallah. It has been mentioned that the makeup fast is preferred for the injection and not mandatory. And this to us is the correct opinion because the fast is broken by virtue of what enters the stomach through the mouth and throat. Whoever induces vomit must make up the day and nothing else. As for the person who vomits without inducing it, he owes nothing, provided that none of the vomit goes back into his mouth. So, let's be clear on this. Some of us, if we are brushing our teeth, we gag a bit and some vomit comes up. That is not you inducing vomiting, right? That is you going through a normal process. Vomit comes up, you just rinse your mouth, make sure none of the vomit has gone back down your throat, and then you just continue fasting. You don't have to make up that day. If, however, you induce vomiting, meaning that, so let's say I make myself vomit by pushing my finger down my throat to make myself vomit, then I make up, according to this opinion, I make up that day. Right? So I want us to be very clear on the difference between us going through a normal process and vomiting and us intentionally trying to make ourselves vomit. It's two different scenarios. So I told two hands going up. Did I address it in what I just said?
Yeah. Sorry for
a
silly question, but
No.
for the brushing the teeth while you're fasting, some may brush teeth before Fajr. Some may brush their teeth 2-3 times a day. So is that accidentally when the toothpaste swallows or anything like that? Would that matter?
Yeah.
Or
So
just be safe and use the miswak, or I just wanted to know.
no, good question. Very, very good question. So some people brush their teeth more frequently to ward off the bad breath, right, during the day. There's a spiritual piece on that I don't want us to miss, right? The bad breath comes with it, right? And there's a spiritual reward for that, which we'll definitely get into shortly. So brushing the teeth, if some of the toothpaste goes down and you know that it's something that happens regularly, then I would caution you about the number of times you're brushing your mouth during the day, right? Because then now you know, right, for you that there is a tendency for it to get down your throat. So I would be very cautious about doing that. And I would recommend that you limit it significantly because you know that. And when I say you, I mean you in general, but you knowing yourself. When I brush my teeth, stuff generally goes down. And if that is your case, then I would try my best. Then I would avoid doing that as much as possible to be on the safer side. That was one part of your question. The other part of your question I want to answer is that brushing your teeth during the day of the fast, nothing is wrong with that, right? That is completely permissible. But again, you need to be very careful about how intensely you brush and how far down your throat that you brush, right? And what goes down. So some people might do it without toothpaste and stuff like that. So there are a number of different ways that I've seen people try to get around this, but just try to keep their mouth as fresh as possible. But again, there's a spiritual significance in terms of the odor that comes out of our mouths while we are fasting, right? There's an authentic tradition around that I think should factor into how much we want to get rid of how our mouth smells while we fast. So I see 1, 2.
Brush your teeth during the fast, is that a malady thing, or is that all the method?
What I mean is brushing it, you mean like it's prohibited?
Like being permissible to brush your teeth? Is it?
No, it is permissible in all of the madhab for you to freshen your mouth. Now, what does that mean?
Right.
So, usually in a tradition, there's references to using a miswak. A miswak is a tool that is used to clean your teeth. It's the same as a toothbrush. It doesn't have the same benefits as a toothbrush. I mean, there are more benefits coming from the miswak, obviously, and that's been proven medically. However, if a person, and I'm speaking now strictly with regards to the Maliki method, if you use a toothbrush to freshen your breath, there's nothing wrong with that. However, you're still responsible for exercising caution when you are brushing your teeth. So, and we all have our oral hygiene habits, and whatever that looks like. So if you know that you're a person where you may, whatever your routine is, if your routine includes you ingesting something, then perhaps that's not the best thing for you to do, because you don't want to accidentally on purpose break your fast. So we really need to be cautious of that. So sometimes it's better to be cautious than it is to have fresh breath.
And I think it goes into
just before you jump in, we had one question.
Is there a difference between spittle coming up and vomit? When you first started talking about vomiting and brushing your teeth and something coming up, is there a difference?
Like spit coming up your mouth?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so when you say there's a difference, what do you mean? Sorry.
Well, when you first started talking about it, you was talking about brushing your teeth and something coming back up. So,
right.
So in essence, you're brushing your teeth and then you bring up some phlegm. That's different. That's different than you brushing your teeth, brushing your tongue, your toothbrush going too far, going towards your throat, where it's causing this gag reflex, and then you end up possibly bringing something up, contents of your stomach. So we're not talking about contents of your stomach. We're talking about what you're asking about is something that would possibly reside at the top of your throat or the back of your tongue. So that's different. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Where are we?
We are just about to finish this here.
Okay, so we're gonna stop here.
Yeah, we stopped right here. Stomach, throat, vomits was nothing. All right, if a person deliberately swallows a stone or seed, he must make up the day and nothing else. Some of the latter Malikites said that one who deliberately swallows a stone must make up the day. As for the person who intentionally induces vomit, it is preferable that he make up the day, because stones and vomit are not food, and fasting is abstaining from food, drink, and sex. Some of them have stated that a person who owes a day and must make the expiation because he deliberately intended to break his fast. The majority opinion of the Salaf, scholars, and Caliphs is that if a person induces vomit, they have broken their fast and must make up the day. It is reported that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam vomited and he broke his fast. Ibn Umar stated, whoever intentionally vomits has broken their fast and must make up the day, and whoever vomits owes nothing. So there's a distinction between intentionally vomiting and just somebody who vomits just because of some natural process.
And just to clarify, the mentioning that Prophet ﷺ possibly vomited and broke his fast does not necessarily mean that Prophet ﷺ vomited during Ramadan.
Right.
What?
During Ramadan.
Okay.
Okay. So if it was during Ramadan, that would have been mentioned in the tradition that Prophet ﷺ vomited during Ramadan.
A similar report is attributed to Abu Hurairah by the way of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If a person routinely uses khul and it reaches their throat, they should abstain from it while fasting. So this goes back to the same thing. we're speaking about in terms of if you know your practices and your practices generally involve something that goes back to your throat and goes down your throat, it's best to avoid it, and you should avoid it. Kissing is disliked while fasting because it could lead to intercourse and ejaculation. So this goes back to intense kissing, not the pecking on the cheek, as you spoke about earlier on, with its variations. If a person kisses and nothing happens, then he owes nothing. If a person kisses and discharges, he must make up the day. Making up the day in this case is preferable. If a person owes 2 consecutive months of fast as expiation for deliberately breaking their fast, or in the case of zihar or for murder, and they interrupt the fast, they must start over from the beginning. The exception is the case of a woman in the event of a period or during postpartum bleeding. In this case, she can pick up from when the interruption occurred, and this will suffice her. This is the case for the person whose fast is interrupted by illness. The case is the same for the person whose fast is interrupted by illness. If not, he must start over. So nothing different from what we've said earlier on, right? The same is the case for the person who breaks his fast forgetfully. Again, same thing. So everything that applies to the fasting person during the month of Ramadan applies to the fasting person who is in their state of kafara, and accident, sickness, emergency travel, whatever it is, all of that still applies to that. So we treat this as though we're in that state of compulsory fasting. Any questions so far? So what I would like to do is I would like to break here, take a 5-minute break. So from where we are sitting, we've covered all of the 5 aspects related to fasting, right? All of the compulsory things that we need to keep in mind when it comes to fasting. Things that we need to navigate during our fast and make sure our fast is 1, valid, and 2, acceptable, right? So that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at validity and acceptability. Validity means that we are still in a state of fasting. Acceptability means that we are presenting something good and wholesome to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So validity is we're not eating, drinking, or having sexual intercourse. Something wholesome means we're not eating, drinking, having sexual intercourse, avoiding vain talk, avoiding getting angry, avoiding all of the things that take us away from being close to Allah, right? So validity and acceptability, we've covered all of validity that we need to as a normal group here in this context, inshallah. Any questions on this? I have let's say 11:40, well 11:35, so let's come back at 11:45 and we'll start off the spirituality, then break for lunch and dhuhr, and then continue after that.
Okay, so before you exit, I have a couple of announcements. One, for the next session, you are going to need a Quran, a translation. So hopefully, inshallah, you did bring something with you. 2, I don't know how many of you have a copy of Riyadh al-Salihin. If you brought that with you, that would be excellent. If not, it's fine. 3, we are going to, part of what we're going to do today is go over some of the du'as that we traditionally say in Ramadan. So some of that you already have. I also have another handout that I'm going to give you today. 4, I signed most of you up today for Remind, so you may have gotten that alert on your cell phone. Please don't ignore that. Also, I had scheduled to have a text of the links for the recordings sent to your cell phone, so you should have gotten that. It was scheduled for 11 o'clock, so you should have gotten those links. I believe it's about 4 or 5 links that you should have gotten. Those links will take you to our SoundCloud account where you can listen to the recordings of the du'as. There are different versions on there, and they're meant to be study tools for you, inshallah, that will help you with, if you choose to attempt to learn these du'as, inshallah, that should help you, inshallah. Okay, that was it. And if you didn't get that, just let me know. You didn't get the text or you weren't signed up, just let me know, inshallah. And Sister Nadra, I did send you an invitation. I don't know if you got that on your cell phone. Did you get the recordings? Yeah. You got those as well? Yeah. Excellent.
Now, where it says text back to reply, just text back.
No, you don't have to text anything. That's if you want to reply. You don't have to reply.
Okay.
So as long as you're signed up, that means today and moving forward, whenever we have any alerts relating to the classes, you'll get them.
All right, so 11:45, please.
Now, I got this. Now, where's the
Yes, sir.
Still hitting hard, man. Still hitting hard, man. That's it. Doing an excellent job. It says.
And see the rest. I'm almost ready. Oh, sure. Yes. Email the generally, but because I am certain I have some things that I'm already forgetting right now that they will remind me of. Yes, so that's once Ramadan starts, so okay, so. We have some with Arabic and then we definitely have some with Arabic English. But you won't completely if you Oh, yes, I think it's more of a translation type thing as a language, but I haven't mentioned that. No, that's a good one. Yeah. In that case, right? Yeah, in that case, it's like glasses. No, if you have your phone on a laptop or anything like that. Yeah, the Muslim, I don't know if they give you the Quranic translation, but yeah, I know they give you the Quran translation.
Oh, yeah.
There's a place that they show us which translation that they use.
That's why I say it. I know you need it. Yeah, and I should make
area.
Yeah, we don't have the translation. So we have two areas, right? You can use this, knowing that, so you can use this to just read it for translation, and you might hear something different, and just take a note of it in your book. So having it in phone with the Mohammed translation, it's fine. Just take a note of the different words, different things you're saying. That translation, the other option is actually go online, you open the browser, and you go to Islamic City.
But don't single me out. I'm a person who so that's what we feel good. Because it says so. Then I kind of like to give them something. Come on, just come explain that to you. Don't come long story. Hey, man, I don't mind. Whatever you don't have, then it makes it feel bad. That's what. But now you don't really have. But they just. And if they know me, that's why we want to swap me out like a custom. Like, so I have a problem with that. So now, because he about to you don't know the answer. That's a medical condition. No, that's a medical.
So this here, right? By default here, it's using the Muhammad as a translation. So if he says, back on 155, and then I get going.
That's where it curves.
And that can happen.
We'll get it on. And then you can hey man, why can't we get along? But he won't.
It escalates.
I
think it just, I think it challenges the quality of the I agree.
It puts you across to the right and home because I want to open and I don't want to enable you either.
And that's my point. So for myself, I choose the people that I know. And like I'll beat somebody, I got a lot of people.
Arguing, denying the real challenges the quality of that's just slippery stuff.
Remember that guy York, he may not be like, Mom, you at least have a long time. Instead of giving money, take it somewhere. But if they don't know, they're like, well, he was the person I was thinking about when I mentioned my feet.
Right.
Let me look at one.
Oh, you got your spot back.
Yeah, I need to stay, man.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
They're nice and new and all that.
Yeah, that's for young people. Man.
Yeah, they're nice and new and all that. They look pretty, but not very functional for a bad background.
That's true, that.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, young boy, what it is, man.
Go ahead, young boy.
All right.
You know what? You know, he used to call me Fat Boy Slim.
No, not even now. You were a little bit of fast boy.
That's like an old young boy.
Yeah, that was one. How you doing? I watched the last
session with I call him Imam Salim.
You mean Salam?
Right? I call him Imam, right?
Yeah.
I watched the last session.
Okay.
So you guys have a presentation set up in what, June? When is that?
Oh, I think it's in June. I think it's after Ramadan or during Ramadan. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm always trying to be ready.
Yeah, but the sisters are presenting something for sisters.
Yeah.
there's a program coming up. There's a friend that I have that's down in Atlanta. She's coming up and she's gonna be one of the presenters. It's called Love and Liberation.
That's Ghana and them, the ways and means. I'm not up on it as much as I should, but I was going, but I am going to be. I want, you know, as a contributing factor. But, he had, Imam Abdul Ali was ill and he's recovering, so that's why. But you know,
oh, sure, I've had it. Because that's what we were told.
Oh, yeah, man.
Till does an excellent job of notifying people when this live thing comes on.
Yeah, Sister Till's all that, man. But her main masjid is Masjid Muhammad on Belfort Avenue. So she's all over. She's all over, man. I call her the Khadija, man. She's always helping. She outworks everybody. What sister? She might not be back. She went to Dubai.
Yeah, I know. I was following her in Dubai.
Oh yeah. Okay. Look at that.
You know, because she posted some stuff live.
Yeah.
About you behind the motorcycle yesterday when you told me that. Motorcycle jacking. Really? You have to jack them on that. What you got? How long you gonna ride a motorcycle?
Oh, blessing me. I want to make at least you know, I made heights. I want to make man. I seen you laying in the back. I want to be there. I want to be there too, man.
Nice outside. I'm coming to it.
I wanted to make it for my brother.
All right, inshallah, we are going to resume. All right, welcome back. Bismillah. Just before we move on, any questions? Is that a hand?
I don't know. This is a discussion about fighting, arguing, fighting, doing the fast.
So right, that falls into the whole category of what makes our fast successful, right? So if we argue, if we fight, if we do any of those things that things that we shouldn't be doing anyway, right? They have a very different light inside of Ramadan, right? They're more discouraged and more disliked inside of Ramadan because in that moment, in that state of consciousness of Allah, we should, since we are supposed to be in a deeper state of consciousness of Allah, we should be avoiding those things even more so in Ramadan. So that's about what we are presenting to Allah. So it's, in this case, we are not fasting, and this goes back to the statement of the Prophet Muhammad that the Muslim who, and I'm paraphrasing here, Allah doesn't have any need for the Muslim who avoids food and drink, but does not stay away from vain speech. And vain speech, I'm going to wrap all of that other stuff in there, right? So Allah doesn't need us to stay away from food and drink. That does nothing for us, really, right? It is more of a way of being conscious of Allah to really clean us from the other stuff. Because our fast is really about the other stuff, and the eating and drinking is really the thing that we can hold on to, the thing that we can see, the thing that is more tangible, quote unquote, for us. But it's really the purification of the character that Ramadan is really about, right? That is what that is supposed to remind us of there. The eating, drinking, and intercourse is really supposed to remind us of the real soul purification that we should be going through, and not necessarily just about the food and the drink. And that's why in any text that we read about food and drink in Ramadan, you have it covered in fiqh. That's a very cutthroat, dry, legal aspect of it, and is the simplest aspect of it. We spend a lot more time talking about the spiritual benefits of the fast than we spend talking about the food, drink, and sex, right? Because that really is a short and quick conversation. Don't do it, if you do it, this is what happens.
Right, some people have problems of refraining from that.
Right.
It's behavior.
It's
during
being,
that time.
right, and that's what it's supposed to lead to, right? All of the food, drink, and intercourse is really supposed to point us towards controlling the other things that are more important, yeah? Because that's the thing that requires our attention day in and day out. I can wake up in the morning and say, I'm not going to eat today, and not stress that. I can wake up in the morning and say, I'm not going to get upset today, and have to be conscious of that throughout the entire day, yeah? So we spend way more time talking about the spiritual part of it than we really talk about the food and drink, because the food and drink is really the basic part of it, right? That's the simplest part of the fast, and not to minimize the struggle behind it, but that's the simplest mechanical part of the fast, you know, and that really is just mechanics.
Brother, I was telling him, I was asking him if you get in a physical fight, and the guy hits you in your nose starts bleeding.
That's a whole different.
You understand what I'm saying? A physical fight. You understand? I mean, it's understandable these things don't happen because they do.
Absolutely.
Right. But Askia, you set me up there. You didn't give me the whole story. I won't. But Askia, thank you very much for making me walk into that one there. I didn't realize what I walked into.
I told you if I shouldn't have known, then that's a medical condition.
All right, so I think we can figure that one out.
Mashallah. Okay, so what I would like for us to do right now, I want you to go to Surat As-Sajda, and Surat As-Sajda is Surah number 32, and I want you to go to verse 15. So that's 32:15. So we're discussing, inshallah, at this point, we're going to discuss the spiritual fast. And I wanted to begin this conversation with a reminder. And this reminder, inshallah, can be found in Surah As-Sajda. So I'm going to ask Imam Qais to read the translation of verse 15. I'm going to recite the verse first. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إنما يؤمن بآياتنا الذين إذا ذكروا بها خروا سجدا وسبحوا بحمد ربهم وهم لا يستكبرون. So Imam Qais.
Only they truly believe in our messages who, whenever they are conveyed upon them, fall down, prostrating themselves in adoration, and extol their sustainers' limitless glory and praise, and who are never filled with false pride.
Okay, and this is pretty much what everyone has, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Is that a frustration? That
No, not yet. Actually, yes, there's a sajda here at the end of this ayah. Absolutely, that's the sajda for recitation. This ayah, the verses preceding this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was discussing those who do not heed the warning. And in these ayahs coming here, he's giving a description specifically in this ayah of those who, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them, they submit. That's basically what this ayah is referring to. All right? And not only do they submit, they physically submit. In essence, they turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in sincere repentance. So there is no warning, right? There is no reminder that will prevent them from, regardless of what it is. It doesn't matter what the reminder is or how the reminder looks, that they will heed the call, they will submit themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they will physically demonstrate that by returning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they would make tawbah. And he stops the ayah, he ends the ayah with وَهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. Yastakbirun, coming from the word kibr, which is, who knows what the word kibr means? Pride or arrogance. So in essence, there's no pushback. There is no negotiating, well, I don't get this. I don't understand this. This doesn't make sense to me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it. I'm submitting. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me for whatever it is that I have done. Moving on to the next ayah, which is, again, this ayah 16 is a continuation of ayah 15, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع يدعون ربهم خوفا وطمعا ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. Imam Qais.
And who are impelled to rise from their beds at night to call out to their sustainer in fear and hope, and who spend on others out of what we provide for them as sustenance.
Okay, so this is a continuation. He's describing these individuals that he mentioned in verse 15, that this is how they demonstrate their submission. They demonstrate their submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by getting up at night. So this is them returning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they are reminded, and when they are reminded, what do? They get up for tahajjud. تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ. He's giving you a visual. They get up from their beds. Madaji' is a plural of the word madji', which is your bedding, where you lay yourself at night. You get up, you remove yourself from that. يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا. They call on their Lord, what? Out of fear and in anticipation and hope for what He subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised them. And then what does He end the ayah with? وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. So they do what?
They spend on others out of what?
In essence, they engage in service, they give charity, etc., etc., etc. The last ayah, which is ayah number 17. I'm sorry, yes, 17. Continue. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Now, this right here is the ayah that we're going to focus on. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. فلا تعلم نفس ما أخفي لهم من قرة أعين جزاء بما كانوا يعملون.
And as for such believers, no human being can imagine what blissful delights as yet hidden await them in the life to come as a reward for all that they have done.
So I want us to take this verse right here. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a general statement about regards to those who submit themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And He says that they what? Good, read the translation.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. No human, so they cannot imagine what blissful delights await them that are hidden in the life to come as a reward for what they did.
Delights, فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ. No soul knows. Okay? مَا أُخْفْ, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reserved for them. These are for the souls that have submitted themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in store for you. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows you, and He knows what you like. He knows what you like. He knows what you desire. And when you read the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you that in the Quran, وَفِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِيهِ الْأَنفُسِ. And in paradise, you will find those things that each soul desires. He knows what you like. He knows what you desire. in what you desire, you will find with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we look at this verse, right, and we think about the sacrifice of the fast. The fast is a sacrifice. Yes? Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that fasting is half of patience. As-sawmu nisfu as-sabr. That fasting is half of patience. Fasting meaning denying yourself. So you're training yourself how to be patient. And half a part of that is learning. That's the learning that we gain from denying ourselves. Denying ourselves food, denying ourselves drink, right? Denying your ego, right? Denying yourself from that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you by you giving it to someone else. When you give it to someone else, you're denying yourself. Because you certainly could do something else with that, with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with. But you are choosing to pass that on to someone else. Why are we doing all these things? Why do we do all of this during the holy month of Ramadan? We do all of this. That's why we're doing all of this stuff. That's why we do all of this stuff. Because we anticipate this reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We anticipate the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in a hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah. This hadith is in the collection of Bukhari and Muslim. And right now I'm reading from Riyadh al-Salihin by Imam al-Nawawi. This hadith number 1215. He says that Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this hadith Qudsi, says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, كُلُّ عَمَلِ ابْنِ آدَمَ لَهُ إِلَّا الصِّيَامِ. That all of the deeds the son of Adam are for his benefit. Except for one. And that is your fast.
Abu
Hurairah is narrating that Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. That's a hadith Qudsi. The hadith Qudsi, those of us who are in Imam Anwar's 40 hadith class, we know the difference between a regular hadith and a hadith Qudsi. So a hadith Qudsi is where the Prophet ﷺ is reporting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Right? So he said, كل عمل ابن آدم له إلا الصيام فإنه لي وأنا أجزي به. That a person's fasting is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no, you can't fake a fast. You can fake everything else. You can fake everything else. You can fake salah. You can fake zakah. Meaning that there's some other motivation for you praying other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some other motivation for you praying so people see you. Want people, I'm Muslim, so I want people to see me praying, so you pray. Yes? I want people to see me giving, so you give. I want people to say that I made Hajj or Umrah, so I make Hajj or Umrah. Right? But you can't do that with the fast because ain't nobody going hungry. There's no glory in going hungry. There's no glory in that. Your fast, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that what? He says, and I'm skipping a part of the hadith. I'm going to go back to it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go to another version of this hadith that's narrated in Sahih Muslim, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَدَعُ شَهْوَتَهُ وَطَعَامَهُ مِنْ أَجْلِ. That my servant leaves his food and drink, okay, and his desire for me. There's no other reason for you denying yourself but for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because there's no glory in that. When I say there's no glory in that, you know what I mean. You're not getting anything from that. There's nobody's going to praise you. Oh man, look how well Fulan is starving. Nobody's gonna. He's really, subhanallah, he's really hungry. Man, he looks really thirsty. I can't believe he's. And ain't nobody doing that. What you do this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of the reward that He subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised. يَدَعُ طَعَامَهُ وَشَهْوَتَهُ مِنْ أَجْلِ. And this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying this to His angels. He's telling His angels, look at my servants. Look at this. Look at this. Look at what my servants are doing for my sake. So going back to the narration of the first narration of the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ says, وَالصِّيَامُ جُنَّةٌ, that fasting is a protection. Okay, so you're protecting your soul. Fasting prevents you, or is supposed to prevent you, a good fast is supposed to prevent you from crossing those boundaries. It's supposed to. Now again, that depends on you. So then he mentioned something that came up earlier about the fighting, right? He says, فَإِذَا كَانَ يَوْمُ صَوْمِ أَحَدِكُمْ. So on the day that one of you is fasting, فَلَا يَرْفُثْ وَلَا يَسْخَبْ. Do not argue and do not engage in confrontation. Physical confrontation. Don't say bad words, right? Don't get into argumentation with people that will possibly lead to a physical confrontation. In essence, going back to you fasting. Because you're fasting. You are fasting, therefore, you are denying yourself that impulsive response. Somebody says something to you that I gotta say something. No, you don't. No, you don't. Somebody insults me, I have to respond in kind. No, you don't. Because you are more conscious than you were outside of the fast. You're on high alert. Don't do that. And you're not doing that because you are focused on that reward. فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُمْ مِنْ قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ. You're focused on that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in store for you. فَإِنْ سَابَّهُ أَحَدٌ أَوْ قَاتَلَهُ. If someone insults you, right, or attempts to attack you, then you do what? فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي صَائِمٌ. Then let him say, I am fasting. Who are you saying I am fasting to? Are you saying I am fasting to the person that's, calling you all kinds of names and all that good stuff? Absolutely not. This is you reminding yourself, you know what? I'm not going to respond to that. Why? Because I am fasting. Someone say something? وَالَّذِي نَفْسُ مُحَمَّدٍ بِيَدِهِ. And this is something that the Prophet ﷺ would say whenever he wanted to reinforce a point. Said, by the one who holds Muhammad's soul in his hand. This is him swearing, right? Swearing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالَّذِي نَفْسُ مُحَمَّدٍ بِيَدِهِ لَخَلُوفُ فَمِ الصَّائِمِ أطيب عند الله من ريح المسك. Imam Qais was talking a minute ago about Ramadan breath. Yes? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, this Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam rather, saying that this is the Prophet ﷺ saying that the odor that comes as a result of a person not eating and not drinking, whatever biology does that results in that odor coming from you is more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the smell of musk. Now, using that, that's an example. We need to understand that the Prophet ﷺ used the example of misk or musk. Not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enjoys musk and all of that. So that we're clear. This is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam using an example that you can connect with. So when speaking to his people, they understood that the most valued perfume or fragrance to them was misk or musk. So for them, that's like, oh wow, subhanallah. That may not elicit the same response from you. But you need to understand and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prefers that. And why does he prefer that? It doesn't matter to him. See, we focus on that. Fulan has Ramadan breath. It becomes a running joke. Fulan got Ramadan, man, come on, get away from me with that Ramadan breath. Right? And we get out and, naturally we get all bent out of shot. Oh my God, you're killing me. But guess what? We're focusing on the wrong thing. See, because stinky breath, right, may be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than you. And his fast may be accepted. And that which you're struggling with, you're toiling with, may cause your fast to lose value. Because you're in an area that you shouldn't be in, because you need to call yourself back. You shouldn't be thinking that, nor should you be saying that while you're fasting. And if you're not fasting, you still shouldn't be saying that, because you're still harming yourself. So then the Prophet ﷺ ends the hadith by saying, لِلصَّائِمِ فَرْحَتَانِ. The faster he rejoices twice. The one who fasts rejoices twice. He rejoices the first time when he breaks his fast. It's like, alhamdulillah, inshallah, I've completed this day. And you're anticipating that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for a successful fast of a day. Right? The second rejoice will happen, inshallah, when you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ. And you find what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised those who fast. Now, in the narration narrated by Al-Imam Muslim, this again is by Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu. So he narrated two different versions of this hadith, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, كُلُّ عَمَلِ ابْنِ آدَمَ يُضَاعَفْ. That all the deeds of the son of Adam are multiplied. In essence, you do one good deed, we're familiar, right? Each good deed is multiplied by 10, right? بِعَشْرِ أَمْثَالِهَا إِلَى سَبْعُمَائَةِ ضِعْفٍ. Up to 700 times. Right? إِلَّا الصَّوْمِ. Except for your fast. So that means you should understand that when you, inshallah, have completed successful fast of a day, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the reward is a reward that you can't even imagine. You can't enumerate that reward. There's no need in you trying, because you can't even imagine. Because that's That's Allah's standard. That is that much of a struggle for you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards your struggle. And your struggle, your reward for that struggle is a reward that you can't even imagine. You can't even imagine. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a hadith narrated by Abi Hurairah, again, mentions in a hadith that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about the reward for people who engage in different activities, different types of deeds, right? One having to do with salah, one having to do with jihad, one having to do with siyam, and one having to do with giving charity. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reserved special rewards for people who have done these things. And that their entry into the garden will be from specific gates. So for individuals who were diligent about their prayer and engaged in prayer, not just the fara'id, not just the obligatory prayers, but they spent their nights praying, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant them entry from a special gate. And for those who successfully fasted and who were diligent in fasting, that they will be granted entry from a gate called Ar-Rayyan. And as a matter of fact, the only gate that is mentioned in the tradition by name is the gate for fasting. That they will be granted entry from this gate. Then he mentions also in this hadith that those who engage in charity will also be granted entry through a special gate in Jannah. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, "O Messenger of Allah, is there any way that a person can be granted entry through all of those gates? All four of the gates that you mentioned?" And the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Yes, and I pray to Allah that you are amongst those who do." Pray again, praying for Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu.
Amen.
Yes, sir.
Can you mention those four gates again?
Okay, salah. So there's a gate for salah, jihad, salah or fasting, and the last is sadaqah.
So the gate of jihad, can we think about the jihad our own, not just, cutting people's necks?
No, it's not just that, but we should understand that jihad in a context that a person is willing to do whatever, to struggle with themselves in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that means that you got to struggle with you, which is the greatest jihad, taming you and your nafs, which is your greatest challenge. A person may be, how can I put it? A person may be, why is this word escaping me right now? No, I'll come back to this. Because that's not coming to me right now. But I'll come back to it. Regardless of what the person's struggle is, a person could be brave, for example, but simply because a person is brave doesn't mean that the person doesn't struggle with other things. So simply because a person is brave and I'm willing to go out and, you've known people who are brave like that. They have this bravado, I'm willing to die. Right? I'm willing to die. But you messed up. You got all kinds of stuff going on. And is that true bravery? That, I'm willing to lose it all, but you can't figure out you. You can't figure that out. You can't figure out how to be a decent person. You can't figure that out, but you're willing to give your life. That's why the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the greatest form of jihad is you keeping you in check. You disciplining you, because that takes work. I mean, you got to face some stuff that you don't want to face. I don't want to acknowledge that I'm this, because that's painful. I don't want to believe that I'm this way, because that's painful, but it's real. Yes.
And which gate is Rayyan?
That's for fasting. That's for the faster. Ar-Rayyan.
Rayyan.
Yes.
Oh, you spoke.
Okay, so I want to, for a minute, so we were just talking about jihad, in the sense that a person is struggling with self. And I really want to drive home. We included in your packet, there is a handout, and I believe it's the second handout with regards to mercy. We learn in the tradition that Ramadan, you have spiritually, you have 3 segments to Ramadan, and some dispute the validity of this hadith, but nevertheless, it's relevant. And we understand, or we've learned, that the first 10 days are days of mercy, right? Mercy or compassion. And I want to talk a little bit about not necessarily the days of mercy and all that. What I want to focus on is mercy itself. I want to focus on that. And what, in response to your question, Muhammad Ali, when I mentioned compassion and mercy and how we deal with others, first and foremost, we have to demonstrate compassion and mercy to ourselves. Yes?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I want to share with you, there's a hadith here in your handout. We're going to get to that in a minute. But I want to start with hadith narrated by al-Bukhari. All right, this is in the collection of Imam Bukhari, narrated Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لما خلق الله الخلق كتب في كتابه وهو يكتب على نفسه وهو وضع عنده على العرش. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He created creation, He documented the following, and that He established a standard for Himself that He holds Himself to. And that this statement is on the throne. And that statement is, Inna rahmati تغلب غضبي. Subhanallah. Allah's standard is that his mercy trumps his wrath. That's his standard for the entirety of his creation. Inna rahmati taghlibu ghadabi. No matter how much you mess up, that's why when we're reminded that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful and compassionate, it's because it's his standard. And no matter how you fall short, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you come to him, inshallah, he will forgive you. He is more inclined to be compassionate and merciful towards you. You have no idea. So when we call ourselves, we have to hold ourselves to that standard. So when we were talking earlier about individuals that fall short, individuals that struggle, we all have our struggles. That we're not that hard on other people because truthfully, usually we're not that hard on ourselves the way we are with others. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't tested me the way he has tested Fulan, and I'm going to look down on Fulan. That's nothing but arrogance. And sometimes we get in a situation where we beat ourselves up where nothing that we do is good enough. Nothing that we do is good enough. You know, my salah isn't good enough. My fast isn't, I can't do anything, you know, and I'm beating myself up. Don't beat yourself up. As long as you are sincere and you're trying to demonstrate your submission, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, is merciful. And if you fall short, he will forgive you. Inna rahmati taghlibu ghadabi. Remember that. Inna rahmati taghlibu ghadabi. We mentioned here a hadith narrated again by Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahimuna, those who demonstrate mercy and compassion. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have mercy and compassion for them. Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman. Or the merciful ones will have mercy shown to them by the most merciful. Irhamu man fil ardi yarhamukum man fis sama. Be merciful towards those on earth, and the most merciful will have mercy on you. This is a hadith that we ought to live by. This is a hadith. If you don't learn any other hadith, this hadith you have to know. This hadith, if you don't remember any other hadith, this hadith you have to remember. If you look at Surah Al-Fatiha, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, what does he say?
Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. The only time in the surah where he mentions an attribute twice. Back to back. The ayah is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. That's the ayah. That's enough. You need to ponder that. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. You need to ponder that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. He's always merciful and compassionate. Some of that we need to embody. As you approach your Ramadan, right? As you approach your Ramadan, mercy and compassion, we need to figure out how to put that in action. Because that's a quality that we all need more of. By putting it in action, meaning that it has to be a state of mind. It has to be an attitude. Of course, comes from the heart. But when you embody that, that's coming from the heart. When you embody that, you buy into that. I've bought into compassion and mercy. For when I engage with others, with those around me, that's what they get from me. We know how to be mean, cold, indifferent. We know how to be all of these negative things. We know how to do that. Most of us, our entire lifetimes, we've spent being those things. We spent doing that. We've spent, putting people in categories, passing judgment on others. We spent a lifetime doing these things. Embody that divine attribute of mercy and compassion. Figure out how to do that. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're praying, calling on your Lord in the wee hours of the morning, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you some of that before you ask him for his mercy and his compassion, because guess what? For him subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's a given. For him, that's a given. It's a given that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to demonstrate mercy and compassion to you because he's already done it. He continues to do it even when you mess up. He continues to show you mercy and compassion. Figure out how to be merciful and compassionate to others. الراحمون يرحمهم الرحمن ارحموا من في الأرض يرحمكم من في السماء. Any questions before we move forward?
What was that door you said in Trinidad?
Yeah. I'm sorry, you didn't translate that door.
Door you said in Trinidad. Mercy.
You mean the hadith?
Yeah.
You have it. It's in your handout. That's why I direct you to handout number 2. Did anyone turn the handout number 2?
Yes.
You don't have your?
No, I got it.
Yeah.
You said, what is it, Arabic?
No, you want the Arabic?
Yeah.
Yeah, barely God's grace is up in there to the goodness. The doers are good.
No, that's Quran. That first part is Quran.
Yeah.
So verily Allah's grace is
Yeah, at the top. No, we're not. No.
So that's what he was asking. That's Quran.
That's Quran.
Well,
The hadith is directly beneath it.
oh, yeah, okay. Okay, sure.
That's a shoulder over there wrong. first word. Ar-Rahim.
Yes. Okay. So, going back to the verses from Surah As-Sajdah, we started with the 3 verses. Of course, we ended with verse 17, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises a reward for those who submit themselves to Him. So as we approach Ramadan from a spiritual lens, we look to this reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised. This is confirmed for hadith narrated by Abi Hurairah, again, radiyallahu anhu, in which he says, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Man sama Ramadana imanan wahtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbih. Whosoever fasts Ramadan out of sincerity, meaning that you believe what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises in Surah As-Sajdah. فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ. Certainty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I deny myself in this way, that He subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward me. You don't know what that reward is. You have no idea what that is. But you know that it is something that is tremendous. And that is a motivation for you. Man sama Ramadana imanan wahtisaban, in anticipation of the reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do what? He will forgive you your previous sins. Now, what does غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنبِهِ mean? What does that possibly look like? The forgiving of sins. Some scholars say that those sins are the minor sins, not the major ones, because the major ones require tawbah. The major ones require that you do something additional. And astaghfirullah is not sufficient. That doesn't, astaghfirullah doesn't cut it for a certain category of transgressions. So for some transgressions, the major transgressions, you have to do what? You have to make tawbah. And making tawbah, of course, means that you allot some time where you make your 2 rak'ahs and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you for whatever transgression you committed. And hopefully, inshallah, you do not intend to repeat that transgression. Hopefully, inshallah, you don't intend to repeat that transgression. Now, by chance, if you repeat the transgression, you go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you handle your business with Him again. But your tawbah is ineffective if in your mind you've already decided, well, I'm going to, I'm making tawbah, but so the but cancels out the tawbah. Okay, so at this point, what I want you to do. Yes.
All right, so let's just use as a case study someone like the brother was talking about earlier, who's struggling with maybe praying or fasting or living right or whatever the case may be. And Allah has blessed them enough for them to be in a state of, I know I got to make tawbah, so I'm making tawbah. And even if in the back of their mind or in their reality, chances are they might do the same thing over and over again. So how do we juxtapose what you just said to that?
That a person is aware?
That, I mean, a person's struggling, and whatever their struggle is, and even Allah brought them to the door of Tawbah. That's a mercy right there.
Mm-hmm.
So they're making Tawbah, but in their mind and whatever their reality is, they know that whatever the sin is that they're making Tawbah for, there's a strong possibility that they will make it again, commit sin again and again and again and again until Allah releases it from
like an addict. Like an addict.
Well, that's
For example.
Yeah.
No, you got sorry, you got. No, I was saying something myself.
Yeah, so a person that has no intention, that it goes back to intention. So the person has absolutely no intention of ceasing.
That's not what I'm saying.
So I can't figure out how to stop. Bottom line, I can't figure out how to stop. So it's an impulse. I can't figure out how to stop. A person that cannot figure out how to stop, their challenge is figure out how to stop. That's your challenge. And a person realizing and recognizing that I can't figure, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I don't know how to stop doing this. You got to figure out how to stop doing it. See, there comes a point where you're taking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy for granted. Now, I cannot tell a person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to accept your tawbah. He's not going to forgive you simply because you can't figure out how to stop. I can't tell you that. Because that's Allah's business. Because He knows what your struggle, what your true struggle is. Now, but your charge is still, you have to figure that out. Whatever it is that you have to do, if you got to go to somebody and talk to somebody to help you work through that, you need to do that. But if there's something that's standing in between you and figuring that out, you have to tackle that thing, that barrier that's standing between you and you getting better, spiritually better, whatever that is. If it's arrogance, if it's fear, whatever it is, you need to deal with it. A person has to deal with it.
Can I have one?
Yes.
So, and I think one part of Tawbah that we often don't pay attention to is the idea that we also have to hope, right? So this is going back to your question here, right? That we also have to hope that Allah removes that thing from us. So taking what Imam Anas said, right? We have to do our part, but part of the thing that we have to do is, if we're making Tawbah, oh Allah, I have no intention of returning to this. In the back of my head, I know there's a struggle for me. But part of that recognizing of the struggle and asking Allah to forgive me for it is also asking Allah, oh Allah, help me to overcome this thing. And I think that there goes in conjunction with whatever efforts that we're making towards fixing it. But the hoping and the asking Allah to help us deal with that thing or to remove that thing from us has to be part of it as well. Because if we're not doing that, then we're not really giving Allah His due. Because the one who will remove that thing from us as a reward for our efforts, right? Because Him removing it from us is part of the reward for our effort to remove it. So even if, and many of us have had this, right? We've been struggling with something, and then we just made some small effort to stop that thing or to change that thing. And boom, this thing is no longer a thing as it was for us before. And we didn't really do anything significant, but because of that moment when He said, oh Allah, I really need to get rid of this. Let me know what to do. And the only thing that we did was talk to somebody and say, you know what, I'm really struggling with this. I don't even know what to do. And the person gave us something like, you know what, make 2 rakats and ask Allah for forgiveness. And that's all we did. You know, I'm chuckling at it now, but I'm chuckling at it to say, you know what, we didn't do anything else, right? All we did was we spoke to someone. The person said, you know what, this one is going to be a tough one here. What? Start off by making tawbah and asking Allah for guidance. And you're like, but I did that. That's all right. You know, try it once more. And that's all you did. And then lo and behold, shortly after that, this thing starts being alleviated from you. It is not so much, right, that we did this big magnanimous thing to change it. But one, we had hope we acknowledge that we are struggling, we turn to Allah asking for his forgiveness, and then we made some small effort to fix it. So I don't know if these two answers combined sort of like help, address that piece that he knows there's a chance he may go back, but what he also has in the back of his mind that he hopefully brings to the forefront is that, you know what, Allah, I have hope that Allah is going to remove this from me in some way, shape, or form. I don't want to go back to it. I have no real intention to go back to it. And I believe that Allah is going to remove this from me, right? He might have this niggling that, it might come, but no, I have hope that Allah is going to remove this from me. And that's what he has to fight. He has to fight that thing that keeps telling him it's going to come back. He has to say, you know what? No, I know that my Lord is going to remove this from me. And every time he says, no, you're going to be fighting with this for your entire life. No, my Lord is going to remove this from me. Even if he falls back into it again, he still has to tell himself, you know what? No, my Lord is going to remove this from me, because this is his struggle here. Because his struggle may not be the thing, but his struggle might actually be believing that his Lord is going to remove it from him. And that is where we can get tied up if we don't believe that it's going to get removed from us. So that's another way to look at it, sir.
Additionally, a person has to be sincere in their asking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove whatever from them. You have to be sincere. There has to be, sincerity is fundamental. So if you're not sincere, then it's not going to happen for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't going to acknowledge that, because that's not rooted in sincerity. Right. You're not, because in the back of your mind, well, man, I really enjoy this, but Allah help me with that. That's not rooted in sincerity. You're fooling yourself. So the person absolutely has to be sincere in their request to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah help me with this, whatever it is that I'm dealing with, help me with it. And you have to be sincere in wanting to be helped and to be rid of whatever it is that you're struggling with.
Because part of that tawbah is hating that thing, right? One of the conditions of it, we have to hate that thing, right? Even though we may enjoy it while it's happening, we have to acknowledge that it's hated, and we have to hate it as well. So.
Hassan and then Askia.
I still hear this qualitative thing, all right? Even though you say that it's not something monumental that you have to do, right? Even if the person,
what's not monumental that you have to do?
What I'm saying is that the amount of sincerity, all right? It could be a small amount of sincerity. If the person has, he knows, all right, that he's struggling with a particular thing, all right? And this thing is, all his life he's struggling with it, right? But he has in the back of himself, he has this small inkling of sincerity, right? Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognizes that, doesn't it? And he gets rewarded for that particular mustard seed, because on the day of, I've read hadith that, if you come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with even a mustard seed of faith, why doesn't that work for right now, the here and now, as opposed to just on the day of resurrection? You understand what I'm saying? I'm saying you
I might be missing the question. I'm sorry.
No, I understand what you mean, that a person is inching towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes? Yeah, I haven't made the leap. I'm inching towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Hadith Qudsi, Man taqarraba ilayya shibran. You inch towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will come to you what? Dhira', an arm's length. Okay? So the humble effort, the issue is the effort. If the person isn't putting forth any effort, listen, I'm struggling with something, right? Okay? But I continue to be around those influences. You're not putting forth the effort. You can't say sincerely that I'm putting forth, I keep on going around. I know that I'm tempted by this. But I keep on putting myself right smack dab in the middle. And I'm wondering why I keep on ending up at the start line. I thought I was halfway to my goal. And I'm back at start and I'm back at start because I continue to put myself where I know I'm vulnerable. If a person struggles with their tongue, right? I don't know how to not say stuff. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand. When I bring up the tongue, right? Speech, that's not a small thing. See, often we overlook what comes out of our mouths. It's not that big of a deal. That's probably one of the biggest deals. Because Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that two of the major things that will land people in the fire are your tongue and your private. Al-fam wal-farj. So when we look at, okay, my struggle is I don't know what not to say. Be it I engage in backbiting, my language is colorful. I'm always talking about people. I'm always engaging in gossip. I'm always putting people. You name it. All of these things are not minor sins. These are major sins because you're causing harm not only to yourself but to other people. So when you're transgressing against someone else. So if your struggle is, I don't know how to control my tongue, that isn't you necessarily putting yourself in a position. That's you not controlling that impulse. I have to say something. No, you don't have to say something. And sometimes it may be you being around people that bring that out of you. I'm around people and I have to engage in these conversations. Well, you're doing this to yourself. Stop being around those people. Stop being around those people. Work on controlling your urges. If your fitna is what comes out of your mouth, work on that. If your fitna is something else that's a lot deeper than that, if you have emotional scars, whatever, it's your duty and your responsibility. You have to address that. You can't ignore it. You can't ignore it and then claim, I'm sincere. I'm a sincere believer. Taking the baby steps is acknowledgement. That's step one. I acknowledge that I have this problem. You get reward for that, absolutely. But then once you acknowledge that the problem exists, then you have a responsibility of doing more. How can I fix this? And if you need assistance, if your pride is getting in your way of asking for help, I need some help with this, that's not that you don't get credit for that. That's a strike against you. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened that door for you. The door of, I recognize that this is a problem. That door has been opened for you. Some people, that door is never open for them. For whatever it is that resides within them. It's not easy and it's not simple. That's why that's your biggest jihad. That's why we cannot allow whatever it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested us with to come in between us and that reward. So when Ramadan comes, you know your stuff. You know what it is. Nobody has to remind you, Fulan, you know what you got going on. You already know what that is. You're supposed to be working on this anyway before Ramadan. But when Ramadan comes, you're even more vulnerable because that stuff will come out. If you're not practicing, if you're not conscious, see, when you're fasting, your consciousness is heightened. Your awareness is heightened. And if it's not, then you're not trying hard enough. The same way you're conscious and you're aware of what I'm not supposed to put in my mouth, right? Is the same way that you should be conscious and aware that I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't respond in this way. I shouldn't touch this. I shouldn't. That's you keeping you in check. This is an opportunity for you to do that work. During Ramadan, you will have that opportunity to do that work. And you will be doing this work sincerely. You'll be doing it sincerely. And when I say you're doing it sincerely because you're anticipating the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it can't be a temporary thing where it's restricted to the month of Ramadan. Because the moment Ramadan comes in and it goes out, you'll fall back into the same habits. Ramadan is gone now, so I can say what I want to say, I can do what I want to do. So the objective isn't for you to simply enter into Ramadan and just, all of a sudden become this perfect person. Because it's not going to happen for you like that. You may be able to keep up the charade for a day or two, maybe a week, maybe 10 days. But again, your nafs will continue to work on you and habits will surface again. Because it's not, your behavior isn't a habit. You're playing a role. You're an actor. You're playing a role, and you're reading the script, and you're going through all of this stuff. And by day 5, 6, 7, the real you will emerge and say, "Assalamu alaikum. What's up? How you doing? I'm back." Go ahead. You had a question.
Okay. So, with the statement of Allah that He's the most merciful of those who show mercy.
Now,
I have had a friend who died under some very, very negative circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout his struggle, and it's been for years, like 20, 30 years, I would try to say some of the things that we're talking about right now. And the thing that he always wrote on was, "I'm going to ride out on the mercy of Allah." Does that work? I mean, you understand what I'm saying?
That absolutely does not work. Because now you're taking Allah's mercy for granted.
What you said earlier.
That you're assuming that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to look past all of your transgressions and you've made zero effort. See, all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do is to make some effort. You make some effort, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do. You make zero effort. Now, again, even saying that, Man qala la ilaha illallah, dakhala al-jannah. Whosoever says la ilaha illallah will be granted entry into the garden. That doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't hold them accountable for a multitude of transgressions. So, no, a person cannot live, that's a gamble.
No, just to add on to that, it's like one of those double-edged swords, right? Because on one hand, you definitely want to ride out on the mercy of Allah, but you don't want to ride out on it in heedlessness. Like, I just don't care about it. Exactly what you're saying, Sheikh, right? Mm-hmm. I'll just do what I want to do, right? I'll just do what I want to do. And at the end of the day, I know Allah is most merciful, so I'm safe anyway, right?
Yeah. He did care. I know it. I knew that he cared. I knew that if it was some fantasy that he would have told to eliminate this, he would have done it. But he didn't have the strength to take the steps to get rid of this. And like every time we had a conversation, I'm like, "Come on, man, what you doing?" And he's like, I got to ride out on the mercy of Allah.
And in a case like this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows his servant. He knows how much you're putting in. That's right. And he knows your struggles. He knows your weaknesses. He knows your vulnerabilities. He knows what you've tried to do, what you didn't try to do. And if it didn't manifest the way that, if a person's effort, their attempt to reclaim themselves didn't manifest in a way that we think it should have manifested, that's my issue and that's my short-sightedness. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Ghafur al-Rahim. He's Rabbul Alameen. That's not my place. I can't say. A person could come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala damaged, all kinds of stuff. But it may be one or two things. I may look at a person, there's no way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to forgive you. I don't know that because I don't know Fulan like that. Allah knows Fulan like that. And he knows Fulan or Fulana's heart. And he knows what Fulan or Fulana did, how he impacted other people. All I know is what I saw. All I know is I was around Fulan, and every time I was, Fulan was always, he's never together. He could never get it together. And he ended up an Asian, but that's my short-sightedness.
And him could be our test. So that person we are seeing could be, so we are looking at it as his struggles, as his test. Whereas Allah could have given that person to be our test. All right, so let's go back to exactly what Imam Anas is saying here, right? This person who we are seeing, so this is not your case, I'm really speaking broad here, right? So this person who we are looking at as, this brother, he's really struggling here, he isn't doing what he's supposed to do. So part of us, so not this case, right, but part of us, we're like, why doesn't this brother get it together? Why doesn't this brother get it together? Us saying that, when Imam Anas is here saying that, that is our test, right? That is just our shortcoming. That brother there is a test now for us to really see, okay, do we think that we know more about this person than Allah does? So every situation we find ourselves in, and I say this all the time, right? Every situation we find ourselves in, there's a test for everyone inside of it. Every single situation, there's a test for everyone inside of it, no matter how good or bad that situation is. So that person could be committing something egregious, something wrong. It's a test in it for them and a test in it for me as I'm looking at them. Because my response to them could be good or bad. My thinking of them could be good or bad. So every single thing, everyone who is participating, witnessing, whatever it is a test for all of us in it. Was there a question here?
Yeah, I was saying, is that where it comes in as don't despair the mercy of Allah, and how you test if that person is a test for you? Is that like maybe a test that how merciful you can be to that person within that certain thing?
It could definitely fall into that, right? It could definitely fall into that. As we were speaking about this, one of the things that I remember is the man who, as he was about to die, he knew he lived like this terrible, like he screwed up. And he told his sons, when I die, what to do? Cut my body up into pieces so that Allah cannot put me back together. I can't remember where I read this, right? But it was something I came across. Cut me up into pieces and scat, just so that Allah cannot put me back together. And
I think I heard another way to set him on fire.
Or something, right?
The ashes of his body and spread them.
But one of the things that he, in the understanding of the narration there, right? One of the things that came out of that was, although his reasoning was jacked up, right? That Allah couldn't put him back together. There was another part of it that was significant that we might miss, right? In that moment, what did he recognize? He recognized that he was wrong and that he had to stand before his Lord, right? So that was like this level of fear there. So his aqidah was, right? But in that moment, another part of it was there like, what? I don't want to stand before my Lord with what I have waiting behind me. And how Allah takes that is up to Allah, right? How Allah takes that. So when we hear this story, it gets translated in different ways and we get different, but how Allah takes that is up to him, because in that moment there, he's shown a certain recognition of Allah that he may not have shown his entire life. And that is something.
I mean, just the rest of that particular story is when he came before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it was one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognized. And that's what I meant by the quantitative thing. How we do it. We put an amount of the faith or the fear or the sincerity that a person may have. We
the volume, a person's body of work. You know, you did all this stuff.
Right.
But you could do all this stuff and stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there could be something within you that is so devastating that all of that good stuff is erased. It's like,
and the opposite is true too.
And the opposite is true. You could have lived a life, but the key to that is one, which Imam Qais mentioned, is remorse. Okay, so arrogant people don't go to Jannah. Right. That's period. I don't care how holy you think you are. If you're arrogant, you're not going to Jannah. Ain't happening. There's no space, as Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, there's no space in Allah's garden for arrogant people. So if you're arrogant, you can forget it. Ain't happening. So humility, right? Sincerity, remorse, these are key ingredients. So if a person, I don't care how much they mess up, if one can't take hope away from people. You cannot take hope away from people. So I don't care what you did. I don't care how you lived your life. If you are not hopeful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a place for you, and if somebody takes that away from you, that person carries that burden because they took that hope away from you by telling you that Allah said, what? Hey, you going to hell. You did what? Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman. You can't take hope from people. So getting back to the brother, we make dua for him. You make dua for him because when he has to stand before his Lord, and however that happened, well, I don't know the whole story. You don't know the whole story. Nobody knows. The only person that knows the whole story is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we got to get out of the business of looking at people and passing judgment and making these determinations, which has become an art form that Muslims have, everybody's bought into this, You're nope, I got to push back on that. I know, listen, Philly's a tough town. We love our people. Yes, we love our people. But guess what? Guess what? I don't care who it is. No matter who it is, that same mercy and compassion, we have to extend that to everybody. Whether I'm in agreement with you or not, whether I like you or not, all that stuff, I have to extend it. Whether you're Muslim or not, I have to, even if you're a tyrant, I got to show you a certain degree. I don't have to agree with you. I may even push back, and sometimes I may push back hard. But guess what? There's still a space where I have to demonstrate you some mercy and some compassion.
Even if different color?
MashaAllah. 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 Of course. Okay, so our schedule is, we can just rip that up, throw it out the window. So what we're going to do is we need to take our lunch break now, 45 minutes still. We'll come back, pray Salat al-Dhuhr, and then we'll probably have one session. We will end at 4 o'clock today. We're going to go over a couple of things. I absolutely want to go over the du'as with you. If you did not receive the text with the recording, you can always just go to our website. Not our website, our SoundCloud account. Go to soundcloud.com/Quba Institute, and you'll find all of the recordings for all of the du'as that you have in all of your handouts. The handout that I gave you today is Du'a Khatm al-Quran, and this is a du'a that we say upon completion of the Quran. And as you all know, it's an extensive du'a, and you have the Arabic, you have the translation as well as the transliteration. So if you want to attempt to memorize this dua before Ramadan so that you can connect spiritually when these du'as are being made. That's why we're providing these du'as for you. Perhaps, inshallah, it will be of some benefit to you, inshallah. So we'll come back at 2 o'clock.
Did you have to take lunch? That was, I mean, you have to actually take lunch?
Actually, because I'm not going to make, we could take a vote, right? But people are hungry and you gotta listen. Unless you brought lunch with you, and we're willing to allow you to, enjoy your meal while we discuss. I mean, I know last year or the year before last, we had working lunch or something like that. We didn't organize that today, and it's way too late for that. So
we need to come back at 2 o'clock, please, inshallah.
Yeah, 2 o'clock. We'll start, inshallah, no later than 2:10. And inshallah, we will stop on time today at 4. Yes, sir.
Where the canoe actually
Yes.
When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam individuals to help another tribe, and they murdered all of these people. You know that?
No, I don't.
From what I heard, I guess you're ready to go to lunch, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in the 4th year, according to this story, right? That it was in the 4th year or the 5th year of the Hijrah. The tribes came from somewhere, and they said that they needed assistance from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He sent about 70 men out with them, and they slaughtered them all. I think it's also in the. I was reading it in Hakal's rendition of like
It's possible that that's
No, that won't be able to check on my son. I can check on my son.
Yes, sir. Really? What hospital, man? Oh, he's in camp? Yeah. Inshallah, man. Lord Cooper. Okay.
Okay.
The handout. So everything else in here, if you need more summaries.
You look at something else on that.
The other pieces, so we've covered all of the things, then the rest is the activity. So the chapter.
I did not. Allah knows. I don't know. With regards to that, I'm going to say I don't know.
Oh, you have access to something like that there? You just ask your computer for that story?
Yeah.
Do you know about that episode of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life when he sent the delegation?
No, I don't. No.
I'll try to get the page number and just a reference, because I tried to look it up too, but that's where the canoe came from, according to this particular story.
Okay.
The canoe originated from that. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked for Allah.
Yeah. If I come across something, I'll let you know. Inshallah.
I have some sandwiches.
No, I have avocado.
Yes,
No, despise.
Really?
Yeah, I can't. No, I
You don't
can't.
like guacamole?
Nope. Avocado is one of those foods that I'm not a person that vomits, but avocado would do it for me. Yep, it's like, no, can't do that. Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's so bad that even the sight of an avocado would make me nauseous.
Wow.
That's why I used to go with bananas. Bananas, the smell of it. I used to get bananas.
It's like,
You used to go bananas over the smell of
and as a
bananas.
matter of fact, I used to like avocado. And one time I had an omelet with avocado in it. That did it. I took a bite, turned my stomach, and from that time, whenever I saw it's like, no.
I don't see a raven. I don't see what people, don't taste it.
Yeah,
it tastes good to me.
Yeah, well.
I mean, there's nothing in that.
You got my muffin.
Got my muffin.
I had a discussion with my wife about that. So what's the purpose of this thing?
It's green, it's mushy. What is it?
I love it, man. I don't know, maybe the texture of it that I like.
I don't know, man.
I won't let you see me eat it then.
2 weeks ago, we were talking.
I just won't look over there. We're good.
She liked it too. She liked it.
Yeah, I
I don't get it. I don't get it.
I like guacamole, jalapeno peppers, tomatoes.
I don't get it. Oh, that's some nutritional value. I don't know. I guess.
I have some dates. Somebody, does anyone like a date? Oh, how you doing, man? I like it. I'm good, man. Very good. How you doing? No, you're hummus.
Oh, yeah. That's called chocolate.
What's going on?
Yeah, she didn't tell me what she had to do, but she asked if you would have the recording. She asked if you would have it.